Hello. Thank you for Data for whatever. He's Data forgot the 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown. Hey, welcome to the Crow's Nest. Tuesday, 4 p.m. Central Time, and today's special guest is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Derek Schubert. Derek, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me on.
No, thanks for joining us. I'm very honored. Very honored. Derek is yet another close friend of mine. So happy to have him on the show. I'm so glad that he's took a break from saving the world to come join the show for about an hour. You've been watching lately on the show, so I appreciate that as well. You've never necessarily been one that's been super technology savvy or an adopter. Um,
That's right. Yeah, I'm like I'm the 100th person. I'm pretty comfortable living in the 19th century. I'm only recently coming into the 20th, and here I'm dipping a toe in the 21st.
I know. Okay, you're on Twitch, you're streaming, but one key question I need to ask is
Uh,
what's the cell phone status right now? What's your cell phone status?
they call it flipper. Flipper, faster than lightning. I mean, slower than lightning.
Slower
I
than
mean,
lightning.
as fast as lightning because I can't help. If I could get it slower than lightning, I would, but I can't.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
Reaper
great.
John, Derek's audio is fantastic. I think he has the best audio out of anybody we've had so far, probably even including myself, since I can't seem to talk into the microphone on a consistent basis. But Derek just admitted to us prior to the show that he's had professional training on utilizing a microphone.
That's right. Oh, let's see. Who? Um, Here's my one of my superpowers is spotting typos.
Mm.
Um, who controls the title of today's episode?
That would be me.
Yeah,
Okay,
fail.
Hey, it's
and
been a day of fails. I failed this morning too, so
Yes, but and it should be the crow's nest, not crow's nest, the crow's nest, and then
it's always been Crow's Nest. But what happened was I misspelled Derek's name. I'm sorry, Derek.
Durkee. We're not going to call you Durkee.
Derek K. No, no, no.
great.
That's what he
Thank you.
goes by, Derek K.
Derek K.
Okay.
I'm Derek K. You cannot fix this. So,
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks. There I am. The so-called myth, so-called man, legend,
ah,
etc. in some order.
oh, it can be fixed. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Hey, so I saw Bob and Julie on. I saw Rhonda on. Dan Goodchild is on. Thank you, everybody. Um, how do you, Justin? How would I say Dade Fide were
It's David Dwyer.
David
It's
Dwyer?
David Weir.
David
It's
Dwyer.
Welsh.
Ah,
David
okay,
Dwyer.
that's really cool. So, thank you. David Dwyer got the countdown, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is what we were trying for today. So today we're going to be talking with Derek Schubert about a lot of Derek things, and be working on a Julie Guthrie sculpt, the werewolf. And this was a resin exclusive miniature 2 or 3 or 4 ReaperCons ago. But again, I don't want to just show things that nobody can have access to, like that one show I did with all the paints that nobody had access to. This is going to be in the Bones 5. This was added as an add-on. It's a little repetitive, but this was one of the add-on levels. I forget which one, but look it up on the Pledge Manager. Really super cool. There's a couple other werewolves in the section. I'm a little partial to this just due to, and Derek, feel free to chime in, I really dig Julie sculpts because, okay, it's a werewolf, so theoretically it's not real. But the anatomical, the way it's set up, it is so believable that it's a wolf, but it's also a werewolf, wolf man. Does that make sense?
Yeah, she has this classical understanding of anatomy
Yeah.
and composition and pose, and then combined with like a lifetime of study of creatures, fur and scales and leathers and all kinds of stuff. So even when it's a fantastical creature, you believe that it could be real.
Yeah. Yeah, she did an owlbear. It was the last Kickstarter, I think. It was a just a very unique take on an owlbear, but it's definitely something you go. I'm going to the zoo. Oh, look, there's an owlbear exhibit. That's what would be in the owlbear exhibit if an owlbear actually lived. I think.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's
And
what.
and of course you go to the zoo to listen for the fearsome battle cry of the owlbear, which is "Roar, hoo, hoo, roar,
Sounds
hoo,
about right.
hoo."
Yeah. Yeah.
We did a song and dance video, and I posted up on my Facebook thing a few years ago with the Bobby Jackson
Oh, yep,
owlbear. Yeah, they give a hoot,
yep.
don't pollute. So if
That's
you
right.
go up on my Facebook Clever Crow channel if you want to I don't know if you want to pay attention to, or take a listen to that. It's not the best production value. We did it on the spot, right? There was no practice or anything like that. It was just all in one take, and it was very well done. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that was one of the first, if not our first, multimedia collaborations, though.
and I got in trouble for that. Did you know that?
Was that owlbear supposed to be secret at the time?
Yes. It was not even intended to be released at the time, and it hadn't even been decided that that was going to be the very first Bones Black miniature. So
Whoops.
yeah, don't. But it was such a good video. I never took it down. I may have even told Ron that I was going to take it down, but somehow I forgot to do it. So that's
But you got forgiveness where you wouldn't have gotten permission
true.
in advance.
True. That's a good motive. That's a good motive to go. Now, I asked you a sculpting question because not only are you world famous, multiple award-winning painter, but you're also a fantastic sculptor as well. You started
Thanks.
you started painting first, and I want to back up and come back to your painting and stuff. But when you achieved your level of painting, was there a moment where you said, okay, now I'm going sculpting. I've kicked this butt, and now I'm going to go start sculpting.
Nice censorship.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. There was a moment. It wasn't so much like, oh, I've done everything in painting, because of course there's always more to do in painting.
Yeah.
And even since that time I've learned even a lot more. But there was this character that I was playing in a D&D campaign, and I had drawn a sketch of this dwarf alchemist wizard. And when I wanted to get a miniature of that figure, I looked around in various catalogs of minis, and there was nothing in the Reaper line for it, and not even in others. So I decided I had to sculpt it myself. And I had read a few years before a couple of articles by the renowned sculptor Phil Lewis, who did a lot of work for Games Workshop. And he did a series of articles in a magazine called Forge Magazine, which it was a little production by a guy named Joe Goodman, who was a friend of mine, and who is now, he founded and he runs Goodman Games, Dungeon Crawl Classics, and some of the old school Renaissance kind of games. Joe Goodman, when he and I were both in college, he made this magazine, and he asked Phil Lewis to write some articles on sculpting. And I read these articles on sculpting, and for some reason I had this phobia of green stuff. I just couldn't bring myself to mix the yellow and the blue and start the process. But this dwarf wizard was the thing, and so I finally dusted off these magazines, got the articles out. It had the step by step of how to put together a copper wire armature, and I went to my dentist. And I asked my dentist whether he had any broken dental tools that he didn't need that I could use for sculpting. And he said, yeah, that's weird, but here you go. Here's the dental tool. Have fun with it. And so I sculpted this dwarf wizard.
Yeah.
And that was my first sculpt. And by then, I had already introduced myself to the Reaper folks. I had gone around to Reaper and a couple of other manufacturers, and I was looking for freelance commissions. And I had gone to the Reaper booth at Gen Con one year, and I showed Ed Pugh, and I think Ron was there. It was it was the early days of Reaper, and I said, "Hi, I'm Derek. I paint miniatures. Um, is this good enough that you could use it in your packaging art?"
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Yeah, kid, this is pretty good. Here's this new box set that we have, the Druid Stone, which was it was a Keith Parkinson painting and a Sandra Garrity sculpt,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. That
so
was a cool little box set.
yeah, they already had the box set art for it, but they said, "Here, paint it the way you paint it, and
Mm-hmm.
if we like it, we'll give you some other commissions." And so I painted it, and they liked it, and they gave me some more commissions, and that brought me into the Reaper family, so to speak. So then I was able to talk directly with Sandra Garrity and Julie Guthrie and other sculptors at these artist meetings that Reaper started having in the early mid 2000s. And it was because I had that access to them that I was able to get some real pro tips on how to level up my sculpting really fast.
Yeah, and that's kind of the neat thing about being able to go and hang out at Reaper, whether it's the Reaper cons, the artist cons, or whatever, is everybody has always been, from day one of my experience there, has been so giving with their knowledge and sharing of their knowledge, and are eager to say, if you say, how do I do X? They're like, oh yeah, let me show you how I do it. You know, and it's not anything where, nope, this is my secret and I'm holding on to it and there's no way you're going to learn this. No way in hell am I going to show you this. So that's always been, it's always been a really cool thing about Reaper. Um, you mentioned a bunch of things in what you just said, but one of the things that I was always super intrigued and impressed with is you keep a logbook, but a sketchbook. Not there. Come back. I mentioned the logbook before I relog your hours and stuff like that, but your sketchbook where you draw out your ideas. And a lot of times these are maybe for your bigger basing ideas or whatever, but it's also your color theories and what you're going to do on a miniature. I tend to just grab a miniature and start painting it. I may have some reference art that I'm looking at, but correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of times you will kind of plan out your whole color scheme before you attack it, or am I missing something?
I've done that. I've done that sometimes, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I've shown it off enough that that people think that I do that more than I do.
Okay.
But I did that a few times when I was really stuck on a miniature, just seeing it totally unpainted and at a loss for even where to start.
Mm-hmm.
Most miniatures, I'll at least have some idea for like the first big move, and then I can start making some other color decisions based off of that. But there were a few miniatures that I had really no idea what color I wanted to paint it at all. And so I got a page in my sketchbook or just got a piece of paper and sketched out the miniature and then started painting on the paper so I could work out what some of the colors would be. And other times I would go through an art book like the Spectrum art books that
Mm.
have this collection of paintings and just find a color scheme that I liked and then figure out how to apply that to the miniature.
You said first big move. So, what can you talk a little bit more about what that first big move is in selecting the colors for your miniature, for your overall kind of color scheme?
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, what do I want the color of the cloak to be on this miniature? Or what color do I want the armor
Mm-hmm.
or the shield or the skin and hair color? Or do I want this sword to have some special, like, magical effect?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to make this miniature distinctive? Um, Sometimes when I'm painting things that are based on a piece of published art, like a lot of the licensed Pathfinder miniatures have a sort of official like official color scheme. But otherwise when I'm making up my own color schemes, then I want there to be something distinctive, something memorable about it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. So, when you very accomplished painter became a kind of a staff painter or a commission painter for Reaper, when you started doing, when you finally broke that barrier and started mixing the blue and the yellow together to start sculpting, What was a couple of things, and I know one thing in particular. If you don't mention it, I'm going to talk about it. But what was one of the things you took from your painting and you put it into your sculpting? Does that make sense?
Yep, yep. Um, when I can sculpt something that I know I'm going to be painting, or when I sculpt something I know others are going to be painting, I'm constantly thinking, what do I need to sculpt, and what would I prefer to paint? Textures or other details. Um, so like if there's a shield and I know this character is like a veteran that has been through some battles, do I sculpt in scratches and dings and other textures on the shield, or do I just sculpt it smooth and I can let the painter decide how much battle damage they want to add? So but that's also I get to sculpt what I want to paint. And I know some people might want to have the sculpted battle damage,
Right.
where a wash or a dry brush or whatever like they could paint the thing that's already sculpted there, and it makes it easier for them. For me, some of that is I just have a lot more practice with my brush, and I feel like I can control paint better than I can control my sculpting tool. So like the female barbarian Amiri for Pathfinder, she has this armor that's like woven wicker armor.
Love that.
But the way I
Love that
sculpted it
piece. Yeah.
was oh thanks, yeah.
Yeah.
I sculpted it smooth, but then with my paintbrush I just painted a series of little dots to indicate the wicker texture on it.
Yeah, and for full disclosure here, I like to do my little textures and dots and stuff like that. I totally stole it from Derek. I've made it my own, but I've spent many artist cons and times hanging out, picking your brain and looking at your pieces. And I always wanted you to show me what you've done recently, and I just sit there and stare at it. So if you ever get a chance and you like somebody's stuff and you're able to see it up close, take that opportunity. It's like at ReaperCon or something like that. People have their stuff out. Ask first if you can pick it up, but ask if you can see it closer and then really see what somebody's doing. I've taken a lot of what I'm trying to push myself in doing is adding textures and interest and what have you. And then take somebody's work that you really like. I mean, I think a really interesting thing, and we have your picture of your Kitsune, right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
This is super duper blown up, right? You're never going to see it this big, ever. But I mean, look at all the great textures and everything that you've added, and even on the jacket and on the little green part, that's a high.
Zoom.
Yeah, that's a highlight, but it's a textured highlight, which is just so super cool. Yeah, I just think that's really cool in the eyes. So I wanted to zoom in on this because you talked about a lot of things that you did, but it wasn't the one thing I thought you were going to go to. And
but I think that Rhonda brought it up in the chat.
Yeah.
Eyes we can see to paint.
Yep. I remember it was a ReaperCon. It was probably in my very first ReaperCon, like in '08 or something. And I took one of your classes, and it was you taught for years, and I think you still do. You teach the eyes and facial expressions class. And one of the things you did was you took some sculpt. I can't even remember what it was, and the eyes were kind of sculpted in. You took a fine scalpel and you sculpted and you carved out the eyes and you made them in almond. Yep. And then I think at that time you were sculpting two. I can't marry the times together that well, but your eyes, the way you sculpt them or resculpt them for other miniatures, but you sculpt them in your own pieces, are a joy to paint. So much fun to add a lot of expression to. They're bigger. Maybe they're a little bit bigger than you would think in anatomical realm or whatever, but for what we're painting, the things this tiny, I think that exaggeratedness are, the eyes, the window, the soul, all that stuff, right? It really helps with the communication. And one trick that you taught in that class, because I have my little notebook, I wish I would have pulled it out, was don't try, if you struggle at eyes or you're really looking for something a little more interesting, and this is a perfect example, don't have the character looking directly at you. Have them looking one way or the other.
That's right.
And
Because
go ahead.
you can have an iris that doesn't have to be centered.
Yeah, you
You
got one
started
eye
at the
going that way,
edge.
one eye going this way, and
That's right.
And I learned something from. I was watching another video, and I forget who it was, but it made a really good point. I remember you also talking about you flip the miniature over when you're painting, and you paint from the nose inside out towards the outside, right? And everyone I think, and from talking to, I know I have one side that I paint better always than the other side. I'm like the right eye for me, I always do better. The left eye, I don't do as good. So I try to paint my left eye first. And so that I know, okay, I'm going to paint the one I struggle with the most. If I get that good, then boom, I feel confident in the right eye. I can just pop it right in.
Well, we all just need to learn how to switch hands with our brushes. So if you could paint the right eye well with your right hand, the simplest solution, don't turn the miniature over, just paint with your left hand and perfect being a left-handed painter.
Well,
Just
being
makes it
as
meaningful.
you are the man, the myth, the legend, who basically, when you talked about something earlier in the show, how he was like, I'm just gonna, I don't have this miniature's not available, so what the F? I'm just gonna sculpt it myself. You tend to do that, so maybe by the next ReaperCon, I'm gonna see you painting with your opposite hand.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
I know
for
something
you.
you don't know. I'm not right-handed either.
So, let's talk a little bit of non-sculpting, non-painting stuff. You have been crowned the D&D Pathfinder Champion of the World on multiple occasions.
One occasion, but it's enough. It's forever. So like at Gen Con they used to run the D&D Open Championship. And it was a tournament. It's gone through a bunch of different formats over the years, but my buddies and I, we were a team, and 2011 we won the D&D Open Championship. So as I told, I think I saw Bobby Jackson in the miniatures area when I first came out of the room where the championship had been held, and I announced, all right, you can stop playing D&D. There's no need to play anymore. We've won.
Yeah.
The game has been won. The game is over. You can stop playing now.
And then you said, "Suck it, Jackson."
Yeah. Quoting Proctor.
That's a direct quote, right?
That is a direct quote. Well, everybody should practice that. That should be maybe a little meme that we can create for Twitch. Suck it, Jackson. No?
Maybe.
Sounds like a great sub gif.
Is Bobby on? I don't know if I've seen him or not. Sorry, Bobby, if you're on. But and
somewhere
also,
in Alabama, a bus is running over someone who doesn't even know it.
The bus is
not here.
The bus has made another appearance this episode. We skipped the bus last week with Aaron Hartwell, but the bus has made its way back.
To be fair, though, that wasn't by choice. It's just because, it just went clean over top of her,
Oh, ouch. Okay.
Well, I had to finish it. We made the joke last week and didn't get to segue into the story that it was supposed to segue into. And,
yeah.
We're going to have her back on so she can finish telling it.
All right. So other thing that you're kind of known for is you paint things pretty quickly. Not only, at a very high level, but you're also a really good speed painter as well. I mean, you've won aces before. That's the Gen Con speed painting thing. But for those folks that are looking to, that like say they're getting better, they're getting much stronger, but as you get better, sometimes you get slower and you get bogged down in the details and stuff. Maybe a couple of things of what would you give advice to help people pick up their speed a little bit better? Because we all buy a crap ton of miniatures and acquire a crap ton of miniatures, and we want to get them all painted. So, yeah.
If you're spending 20 hours on every one when you could be spending 15 or 10. Yeah,
Right.
then
Yeah.
your well, as the saying goes on the forum, if you still have miniatures left to paint, you can't die. You can't
True.
die if you have unpainted miniatures. So some
True.
people are securing their immortality
Yeah.
by amassing the stockpile. But some of it is um, just recognizing there are some times in the miniature painting when you don't have to be precise,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be faster if you let yourself be sloppy, knowing that you can be more precise with a later step.
Would you
And so you
say, Derek, that you may? Is it possible to learn more when you get stuff done quicker? Like so, a volume versus quality type thing, or no?
um I think it'll vary from person to person. Probably there are some people who maybe just the idea of painting fast or painting a lot, it wouldn't stick, and they might feel like they have to do something slow, methodical, and perfect in order for it to sink in. But then
I
there are
could.
other people. Yeah,
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I could imagine that if you painted really quick, personally, right? Because I don't know, that might compound bad habits quicker, right? If you had them, right? If you
right.
had an issue.
Yep. But then there might be other people who feel frustrated because, like, they feel like they're lavishing so much attention on a miniature and somehow it still isn't coming out the way they want it to. But maybe giving themselves permission to be more sort of loose and fast and free might help them make a breakthrough.
And also,
Um,
yeah, if you're trying to learn something new or a new process, you're not going to nail it unless you're Derek Schubert on the first try. It may
ah,
take 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 attempts, but get there, and continuing to rework and rework and rework an existing miniature may not help you develop, but going through the full process of learning a new technique, whether it's in MM or whatever, and then going, okay, this is what I did the first time, and picking up another miniature and trying it again, and with a slightly different sculpt or whatever, and so you're having to think through the process. To me, that tends to help a little bit more. I see so many people trying to learn a process and just get bogged down, like you said, on one miniature and just trying to overdo it. Where if you let go and you jumped on to the next one, maybe your skill just automatically levels up the more that you do it. So that's kind of your volume answer a little bit, Justin.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so a couple other things that are coming to mind. Then I'm seeing in chat, Bearded Goblin is mentioning contrast versus smoothness later as
Mm-hmm.
advice from Trovarian. And one of my thoughts on painting fast is I would rather, or it's faster to paint something with the one layer of the color you want than to paint it with 10 layers of the colors you don't want in order for the 11th layer to be the color you want.
So the opposite of Proctor.
So, well, um, I think Michael does some shaded blending or blended base coats, and Michael has a bunch of different techniques in his like different color
I think you
schemes.
meant to say shady.
Shady, shady base coats, some shady techniques.
Yeah, so
Um,
very shady techniques.
But if you can put down the paint and your very first layer isn't a smooth one color base coat, but if you already have some shadows and highlights in there in the areas where you're going to want those shadows and highlights, then that could save you some time because you're getting that first layer of paint is closer to the value, closer to the color you want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then one of the techniques that I would teach in my good fast painting class is it is about jumping up to contrast. Like if I know that this part of the miniature is going to have the highest highlight, I'll put the base coat on first, and then I'll immediately paint the high highlight color on it. And then my next step will be like making that intermediate tone to sort of fuzz it back in and blend them back together. So it's like take 5 steps up and then take a step back and a step back and a step back. or like 5 steps up and 2 steps down, and then a step up and a step down. And so
Kind of like a
that,
wax on, wax off.
yeah, right. So so that for me can sometimes can speed things up, because I'm not painting my first highlight over everything, my second highlight over a slightly smaller area, my third highlight over a slightly smaller area. I'm immediately going, here's my fifth highlight, boom, and then my third highlight is just along the border between the base coat and that fifth highlight, and then my second highlight is only on the border between the first and the third, and so on. Um, but but that's something that comes with practice and experience, I think, because if you don't already know where you want those highlights and shadows to be, then immediately going that drastic of a step, some people might not. It might not be the way some people work, but for me, it fits the way that I can imagine the highlights and the shadows, and the way that I understand my paint to work.
No, I mean, you have a very good, you achieve very strong levels of contrast, but I don't remember, you don't typically throw on white, pure white. You're using like more of an off-white, right? And
Yep,
yeah.
that's
So,
right.
so
Um,
you're achieving your contrast through the gradations, but also with color contrast on your figure, i.e. the photo that you selected for your little your
that's
icon.
true. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. But again, one of the things that I didn't know until, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, was just the idea of having a consistent lighting tone or color. And I think it was when Jeremy Bonamont was a guest artist at ReaperCon several years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he mentioned that he would mix the same kind of off-white into the highlights of all his colors on a given miniature, so that the miniature would look like it had the same sun shining on it, no matter what the color was, or the
Yeah.
same moon, or the same whatever it was. And so whether it's a Reaper Master Series linen white, or it's a um, whatever, like a skeleton bone or a golden highlight, or whatever the off-white color is, I'll find a way to mix that into all of my colors,
Mm-hmm.
so it unifies all their highlights. But then I reserve that pure white for places on the miniature where I want it to look like there's actual light shining off of something
Mm-hmm.
shiny on the figure. So like the eyes and metallic objects, or smooth enameled objects. Um, so uh, so that's right. I don't go to pure white on everything.
So,
Um,
Derek, are you ready to start streaming painting tutorials? Because that's what's going on in the chat right now. Bearded Goblin, we need Derek on a stream to paint and teach us at
I
Reaper
see that.
Ron. Now Reaper Ron has jumped on. Jim is Wapple on?
Jim Wappel is on. Yeah.
Nice. Hey, dude, how are you doing? And then there's some other stuff about you doing that. So maybe we need to get you streaming and doing some painting tutorials.
We will see.
Yeah.
I think I don't have a good home studio set up yet, but that's
Mm-hmm.
something that would probably just take a camera and clearing some space on a horizontal surface here in my apartment.
Yeah.
Um, so um, thank you for the votes of confidence and the requests. It's always great to see when people appreciate your work, and
Yeah.
they think that you're worth learning from.
No.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So thanks.
Yeah. You're a superstar. Um, all right. So let's talk about some of the other talents that you have. I mean, you're not just, I mean, I think the term skater, you, I don't know if you came up with that, but it was definitely originated because of you. Would you
Yeah.
agree? Would you agree?
Um, I'm not definitely not the first person to sculpt and paint,
Yeah.
and probably the folks over in Europe are like, wow, these Americans thinking it's such a novelty for someone to sculpt and paint when like all of us do that.
Right.
But
And a lot of the
yeah,
historical folks do that all the time too. But yeah.
yep, yep, yeah. Doug Cohen's like,
Uh-huh.
guys, I've been doing that for decades here. So, but yeah, the portmanteau word of a sculptor painter as a skater.
Yes.
I don't remember who came up with that.
I don't
And
either.
then even whether it's SC for skater or SK.
Well, it's K.
Uh,
It's K because that's your middle initial.
sure. I
So,
bring the K.
Yeah, you got to bring the K. You got to bring the K. But not only are you a skater of world renowned, but you have many other talents outside of painting. Do we have any other special guests that would like to join us on the show today?
Let me see.
Did you bring anybody else with you today? Anybody else drop by the apartment for the show? Is that what I'm asking?
There's a line here. Yes, hold on. I gotta go answer my door. Waylon Smithers is saying he has somebody. Oh, all right, fine. Here's the micro. Okay. Yes, this is Montgomery Burns. I want you all to know on the crow's nest that I am here to take it over. Michael Proctor, this must end immediately.
This is
You're
my
in
last
violation.
show.
All right, Mr. Burns, I need that back. I need that back.
That was awesome. That was
That
awesome.
was gold.
Yes, that was cool. This is going to be the Crow's Nest this is the last episode of the Crow's Nest, and it'll be rebranded in a couple of weeks under Derek's new show.
And as Reaper Ron says, those guys can't do the rerun dance either. That's another. Somehow we got to talking about our favorite TV shows growing up, and I remembered with fondness What's Happening.
Yeah.
And the poppin' and the lockin' of Fred Berry rerun. I think I did a very middling rendition in as much as I can do a rerun dance. But
Yeah.
But I think there's a YouTube video
Of you doing that?
of me doing like a 2 seconds of a rerun dance from the interviews at ReaperCon a few years ago when
Yeah.
Ron interviewed all of the artists. He had most of the painters and the sculptors on.
You do other impressions of Reaper folks. You care to do
sometimes.
one? You care to do one, or you choose not to do the one that I'm thinking about?
I will. I will withhold. We will let it remain. We'll let it remain an urban legend. But a few years ago, well, when we're all at Reaper for our artist gatherings for ReaperCon, and we're hanging around the Reaper staff, we're hearing them talk and in just a broader variety of contexts.
Yeah.
And so we could pick up on their vocal mannerisms.
Yeah.
And Tim Hill, young Tim Hill, who sculpted some really cool stuff for Reaper.
Who used to come around a lot and then all of a sudden stopped.
I think he has.
No. We don't go any other detail in that. Just all of a sudden there was something
just
that
disappeared.
Yeah, just disappeared. So go ahead.
But he and I were riffing on our impressions of a particular Reaper staff member.
Yeah, and we won't go any further into who that staff member was or anything, or if or not that Tim Hill doesn't come around anymore because of his in particular riff. So
yeah,
we don't want to get you in trouble. But just another episode for the bus to drive on by.
Yeah, that's right.
On the Crow's Nest.
Yeah,
So.
I like paying attention to what makes people sound differently, like their different vocal cadences and just sort of notes of their voice and idiosyncrasies of pronunciation or favored words that they like to use.
A question that Rhonda wanted me to ask you, or a request, I should say. And this goes back to that's interesting. That's something I'm interested in. I think I'll just go do that. That was something that you kind of said to me when you decided that you were going to join a band.
Uh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I've been singing in musical theater
Uh-huh.
since I was a kid, and acting and enjoying performing. And I like singing along to the radio and singing along to my favorite musical artists.
Mm-hmm.
And some gaming buddies of mine here in the San Francisco area were taking some music classes at a local music school, the Blue Bear School of Music.
You there?
And he said, "Hey,
Yeah. Okay.
they have." He said they have voice lessons too, and so I thought, well, that sounds fun. I like to have a little more training in singing.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a class in singing, and then I found out that another of their classes was in it's essentially be a rock band for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
They get a teacher, and people sign up to play guitar, to play drums, keyboard, and sing. And so I signed up to be in one of these class rock bands, and it was a lot of fun. Met some cool folks. Um, learned just more of the learned how to listen to songs more critically and understand the structure of verses and choruses and
Mm-hmm.
solos and breakdowns and stuff. And I think if you there's another YouTube video of me with the proper search where you can find me singing at the Cafe du Nord in San Francisco from a few years ago.
Well, do you have a quick song that you'd like to serenade Rhonda with?
Uh-oh, let's see. Um,
Because as you think, Rhonda is, well, Justin is the show producer. Rhonda is the behind the scenes writer for the show. She helps me kind of flush out a lot of the questions that come on with the show and remind me of things that my little tiny brain can't retain. So yeah, something, if we can pay her back a little bit, even though she wants some kind of miniature of a crow dressed up driving a bus. But yeah, anything you can bring back to Rhonda would be great.
sure. So I like going to karaoke and
Mm-hmm.
singing with my friends and singing to strangers. One of my go-tos. Oh, Rhonda's saying she doesn't remember writing this part. One of my go-to artists is Sam Cooke
Uh-huh.
because I have a tenor voice like Sam does. So his song "Cupid" is one that I often break out for my first karaoke offering. But let me see if I can get it here. Cupid, draw back your bow and let your arrow go straight to my lover's heart. For me, nobody but me.
That
So
was
there's my
that was great.
there's a little bit of Cupid for you.
That was
I'm gonna be
fantastic.
honest,
Yeah.
I genuinely was not prepared for today's show.
Me neither. These shows
love
just
it.
end up on
Love
their
it.
own direction, going wherever. Whether a bus is running over somebody or not, it tends its own thing. Okay, Ron did have a request for you on an impression, and I think you don't have to do it, but he wanted Dave Doust.
Yeah, I think my impression of Dave Doust is my impression of Ron doing an impression of Dave Doust.
Okay, yeah,
So,
that works. That works. That works.
but
He asked for it. He asked for it.
But I think I'll have to decline on that
Okay.
because I don't have firsthand research on it, and
yeah.
so I feel like I would be doing a disservice to Mr. Doust.
Okay.
Reaper
Okay.
Ron says no with 4 O's. Alas, yeah.
Well,
I actually have a question for you.
go for it.
Sure.
Schubert. So obviously, in talking to the community and lots of different instructors and basically the people that have spent a lot of time around you, they often refer to you as, you get the Renaissance man or you get the man, the myth, the legend. I was curious, does it ever get annoying is not the word I'm looking for, but does it ever make you just take a deep sigh because you don't necessarily identify that way? or like kind of not necessarily like it's imposter syndrome, but more does it ever wear thin on your patience?
Um, Sometimes it feels like it's a lot to live up to. It's and sometimes it feels like it's putting up some sort of artificial distance between me and other people.
Which you
Um,
don't necessarily want, I assume.
that's right. Nope. Like I want to be able to relate with my friends on a personal kind of equal level. And even if it's all joking, the man, the myth, and other kinds of
Urban
praise,
legend, even.
yeah, then somehow it puts up this sort of barrier that I wish weren't there.
That's a good. That's good. That's interesting that you say that because I've never felt like there was a barrier to come up and talk to you. So I hope other people
Hmm.
don't feel that as well. I mean, you and I have, God, we've known each other for 10 plus years or so.
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of conversations about a lot of different things. I've never really felt like, yeah, but uh, you just are a wealth of knowledge in a lot of subjects, and you get into and dive so deeply into things, and you learn them at such an in-depth level. I think when I've used that term jokingly with you is more of like, wow, I've always been impressed. I've always been impressed. You've decided I'm going to do this, and you do it. And I think that's something that um, is something we could all strive to do that a little bit, and not be afraid of taking chances and trying to do new things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
we've talked about this, and I didn't even think about talking about this with you, but I have mentioned this to more than a few of the painters, and I haven't talked to maybe a couple of the sculptors as well. Justin kind of talked about the imposter syndrome, right? And I think a lot of young people, artists, even artists like myself at times, struggle with that. Do you ever find yourself in that kind of area, that spot where you've got to go, where you go, am I really doing this? Am I really any good? Kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm I get to that place, and I really have to sort of uh, split my mind and make sure that there's the part of me that realizes that this is something I have fun with and that I enjoy and that I have lots of experience with and do well at, and shut down the critic that says, uh, well, the next thing won't be as good as the last,
Mm-hmm.
or any kind of critical thing like that. Um,
Not to drop some heavy questions on you, of course.
yeah, no.
No, but I
Uh,
think I want that even to, I'm not going to probably ask it of everybody that's on, but to hear that kind of come back from you is, I think it's important that everybody hears you multiple. I mean, we were joking on a show a while ago about how you've left Sophie's at ReaperCon just because you have a small apartment, and and how you lay upon a bed of Sophie's and all that stuff, right?
yeah, yeah.
And there was nothing egotistical or vain about that statement at all from you. It's just, yeah, you've been very prolific, and you've really studied your craft and really tried to perfect it over the years and stuff. But even at your accomplished level, there is self-doubt that creeps in with everybody. And I think it's good to remind everybody of that, because sometimes you feel like you're the only one. You're like, God, I know I did good at one point. And are there times when, you sit down and you want to paint or anything and it just doesn't work?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I can find five other things that don't require a kind of um, positive or creative output from me,
Mm-hmm.
where I can be passive, and somehow it'll pass the time, um, and let me just not have to deal with the doubt that comes in. But like you said, yeah, I well, when people see you also,
Mm-hmm.
you're streaming here. You are a award-winning painter. You are you are the executive director judge of the painting contests. You're a prolific contributor to the Reaper Online community, and people will see you. And if they don't know you outside of that, they'll think like Michael Proctor, painting god,
Mm.
which is, and there's an element to that, and it's true, but it also, um, it's not like you're more than that. You
Mhm.
are you are a man in full, so to speak. And I think um, there's, on one level, people want to have that idea of like looking up to this legendary figure who is always, whatever you paint is going to be great, and you're never going to make an errant brush stroke, and you never doubt yourself, and like every step is a step on the road of perfection.
Right.
And some people might want to believe in that myth, um, but yeah, it's a myth.
It
We're
is.
we're people.
It is a
We're
myth, and it's a myth that I thought as I was getting better, okay, I'm gonna get good where I can just sit down and I can knock out a piece, right? And I can just kind of mail it in a little bit, but it's gonna come out great. That's so far from the truth. If you want something to look good, you better put yourself into it. You better tune into that piece and start pouring yourself into it. Or if you're not putting yourself into the piece, it's going to show in the final result, regardless of whatever level you're at. But it's good to, and again, but it's funny when you were saying that, I did feel that kind of twinge of uncomfortableness, because I never want anybody to ever feel like, oh, there he is. He does all this stuff. I can't go talk to him. I mean, the whole point of one of the things I really dig about this hobby, and I kind of came to it from the outside, not, I played D&D in middle school and whatever, but left and did sports and did all that stuff. And then was like, let's pick up painting again. And so I was kind of outside coming into this world, but the people I've met within this hobby are the coolest people that my very closest friends, because we all have this thing in common. Everyone seems to be approachable. So if you're new to this and you're watching these kind of things and you come to ReaperCon, again, I'll say it every single episode, you come to ReaperCon, you come to Artist Row, please come by and talk to all of us in Artist Row and just sit down and let's talk, and let's, ask us questions, get familiar, get comfortable with us, because that's what we're here to do, is have a good time,
Yes.
Yeah. So
Wear boxing gloves though, because Michael Proctor sometimes bites off fingers if you waggle a finger too close to his mouth.
Yeah,
Just
I'll
bites it
do
right
that.
off.
I'll do
Just
that.
watch out.
And I swallow it, so you're not getting it back until it goes through.
Wow, this show has literally gone to every reaches of the planet.
All right,
It just everywhere.
we're an hour in, but I maybe not quite an hour, but I did want to talk about something. Everybody knows that I'm an avid mountain biker. Love to go out, ride 2 or 3 times a week. Go out and ride. Derek was here not too long ago, and I was having back issues, and that was right before I ended up having surgery and stuff. We went to Idaho Springs, and I was walking like a little crooked man, looked like a question mark. My back was so jacked up. But I have always been so blown away, impressed. One year, you decided, you live in the Bay Area, Oakland-ish area, right? Kind of outside of Oakland.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right, Oakland, right?
You decided, I'm going to go to Gen Con, which you do every year. But instead of flying in a plane, or maybe even driving in a car or a bus, or, typical motor vehicle, carbon, footprint, massive travel, you decided, I'm going to ride my bicycle.
It was something like that. I had worked up to that decision for probably 10 years.
No. You just decided it on a Saturday.
No, wait. This is the legendary version, right?
This is the legendary
It
version.
was-
Decided on the spot.
Yeah.
It was,
yeah.
it was.
I got to leave
I
in a
just
couple of
woke
days.
up-
Let me go get a bicycle.
I woke up, got a twinkle in my eye, and just out I went. And 3,000 miles later, Gen Con, baby. Yeah, I got heavily into riding my bike just for commuting around town, when I was living in Los Angeles, actually, after college, and I got a job in LA, and I moved to the next town over, 10 miles away. And I had a car, and driving my car to work would take me like 20 minutes. But I decided to get a bike and bike to work at least once a week just for a change. And so it was like an hour bike ride. And then I got into it even more and just would ride my bike when I could. And when I was in grad school up here in the Bay Area, then I was riding my bike to grad school every day and barely using my car.
Mm-hmm.
And and then after grad school, I had this idea of taking a long trip by bike. So I took a bike trip for 3 months in Europe. I took my bike over to Germany and Netherlands and England and Wales, and I rode around there for 3 months, um, putting together a bunch of like tourist destinations that I wanted to go to,
Mm-hmm.
but ride my bike from one to the next. And once I got back to the US, I was thinking that riding from one coast to the other would be a great trip for some summer. And
Mm-hmm.
some summer kept getting pushed off and off and off. Um, and when I was at ReaperCon in 2009, that was the year my younger brother got married, and his wedding was in North Carolina a month after ReaperCon. So I took my bike to ReaperCon, and then I rode from Dallas to Asheville, North Carolina, in like a month.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another long bike trip that I took, and then I finally pulled the trigger on taking this cross country bike trip, and I made sure that I would be at Gen Con for that time. And it was great because um, I tailored my route to visit a lot of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So like I started in Seattle, where I got to visit Allie,
Mm-hmm.
Jubilee,
Mm-hmm.
and Marika and Amy. And I dropped in at the Paizo office as well because they're in the Seattle area.
Mm-hmm.
And I met some of these guys at Paizo, and I said, "Hi, I'm going to see you in 2 months at Gen Con." And they looked at me like, "Wait, what? You're going to bike there?" I said, "Yeah, I got it all planned out." So and then I rode across Washington State, and I went to visit Jason Wiebe, and I
Mm-hmm.
see he's on Gwydion Green.
Mm-hmm.
I got to visit Jason at home in Spokane, and I got to see um, Yellowstone National Park
Uh-huh.
and other national parks along the way, like South Dakota, Badlands,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to visit Jim Ludwig of Dark Sword Miniatures in
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, and uh, and so I got to Gen Con, and so that was 2 months in, and then after that I kept going. Um, Visited Chris Fitzpatrick from Crocodile Games, who lives just outside of Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I visited Mengu and Debbie
Mm-hmm.
in Columbus, Ohio, and then other friends of mine in Pittsburgh and Washington D.C., and then finished at my parents' place in Connecticut. So that was my summer of 2014.
But what would have been really impressive is if you would have rode back.
That's right. I cheated. I took the train back. I mean, let's see. No, I strapped my bike to my back and I just
And
crouched really deeply and then I jumped.
yes,
And
yeah,
and
you.
and I flew through the air and then I landed with a sonic boom back in Oakland. I
Wow.
accidentally leveled 4 city blocks. I had to pay some damages, but
Yeah,
people understood.
the
And
man, the myth, the legend, Derek Schubert. I mean, I think
absolutely.
that story that's classic. I love that. I love that story. I just
And I am genuinely curious though, like logistically, what goes into that? Do you plan every road you're going to go? Do you plan every tire change? Do you plan even calorically what you have to take in to make it work every day? Like there's so much to that it isn't just I'm going to go ride my bike. You have to plan every aspect of it.
There, um, there were some things that I tightly planned, and other things that were a lot looser. I had these other two trips that I had already done in Europe, and that month from Reaper to my brother's wedding. So I already knew generally that that biking like 50 or 60 miles a day was a comfortable pace for me.
mm-hmm.
And And I also knew that my body, like, I would just be hungry all the time, and I could just eat a whole pizza for dinner and have ice cream every day. And because I was burning like 5,000 calories a day, that somehow it would just work out. I didn't plan every road, but I had some good maps for like the Adventure Cycling Association is an organization that publishes cycling route maps around the country, different ways to get from east to west and north to south and so on. So I used some of their maps. I used some Google Maps. I just like asked directions from local people. How do I get from here to there? Um, but uh, but I came up with a plan. Like on that trip in 2014, I knew that Gen Con was going to start August 1st or whatever the date was. So I knew I had to be in Indianapolis on that date. And then I got out a map online and I looked. Well, what town is 60 miles away from Indianapolis? Okay, this town, Indiana. Okay, so that's where I have to be the day before. And then the day before that, where can I be that's 60 miles away from that? So I made the spreadsheet of like day to day, giving myself a week of rest of no biking on like 1 day per week.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked it out and just worked my way back west and figured, oh, I can be in Minneapolis to visit Jim on this day or like this week in July.
Mm-hmm.
And then working back from there, this is the week when I can be at Mount Rushmore. And this is the week when I can be at Yellowstone. And this is when I have to leave Seattle in order to start the whole thing. Or if I leave any later than this, I'm probably not going to make it to Indy. Um, so I worked that out. I came up with this spreadsheet. While I was on the road, there were some days where I had planned to make 60, but I made 50 or even 80. Or
Mm-hmm.
like the last couple days getting to gym, um, I there was these fierce winds in Minnesota that were just pushing me back, and it was hard riding. So I made like 50 miles in the day when I expected to make 70,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next day I had to make 90 in order to get the rest of the way. And so it was a long, long day. Um, so yeah, Justin, some of it was carefully planned, but there's still some room to change some things around.
Well, that's great. I mean, I feel like that helps humanize the entire effort. So it helps kind of bring it back into, but you're still a human and you still did, like, you still had pizza and ice cream. You weren't on like nutrition blocks to make sure that calorically you could manage it, right? Because it's not an easy feat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool to me. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, cool. Looks like we just got a raid a little bit ago, Justin.
Did we?
Troll
Oh, Troll
Lord.
Yeah.
Lord. Thank you,
Troll
Troll.
Lord
Hey.
Games. Hey, thank you very much. Um, just rated us, but I think we're at the end. I have to jump off and actually do some real work now. Go
Uh-huh.
back to my
Whoa,
job.
Derek, you hear this?
Yeah, I know. I know.
I don't know. I think he's gonna change into his superhero outfit and go go fight crime or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
It's all an
I'm
excuse.
I'm gonna go put my bus driver's outfit on and go drive around the
Uh-huh.
neighborhood.
And I bet you do that two legs at a time too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Take a running jump. So this is where we kind of wrap things up, Justin. This is kind of your cue to maybe looking for another raid. Um, Derek, is there anybody that joined us today in your apartment that didn't get a chance to talk that maybe has something that they'd like to add?
I'm keeping them at bay pretty well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I'll tease that if I have my own show or if I'm a guest somewhere else, then
Yeah.
maybe I'll let one of them talk.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Do you have anything that you would like to pub? Like what have you been doing lately around town? I know you do a lot of volunteer work.
Yeah, my work with the tree planting program that I've been running here, a nonprofit, that is pretty well wrapped up, and
Hmm.
the fact that we're sheltering in place and not leaving our places of residence, that would have closed things down pretty well anyway. But I'm doing a lot of online gaming with my friends.
Hmm.
That's been my sort of safety valve for keeping up my contact with friends and staying staying happy here during the situation we're in.
I didn't know
So-
you played video games. What online games are you playing while I set up our raid here?
Well, it's not video games as such, but it's like D&D and Pathfinder through online platforms like Zoom and Discord.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, that's cool. We may have to have you as a guest star on one of our Reaper Errant shows. What do you think, Proctor?
I would love that. I've played D&D with Derek. Derek's a badass dude. He's a world
I
champion,
bet.
as we said earlier.
Yeah.
We might need Derek to come in and burn that witch that we're gonna have to fight in a couple weeks.
Call in the reinforcements.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
speaking of reinforcements, the raid I have set up is Paizo.
Ah,
So
okay.
they're currently playing Pathfinder Kingmaker. It's the video game they partnered with to make, but
Cool.
it is Paizo and it is kind of D&D. You guys should check it out. It is very interesting.
Awesome.
But since Derek talked about Paizo a little bit, I figured we could do that.
No, that'd be cool. Do we want to talk about the rest of the shows on the Reaper Twitch streaming channel
Yes,
thingy?
actually. So the rest of the week we have Anne Monday through Friday at 11:30 Central. That's an everyday show.
Yeah.
But the rest of the week we don't have any shows tomorrow afternoon.
Hmm.
And then Thursday we have Painting Platinum at 3 p.m. Central, and then
Mhm.
Reaper Live, the premiere show at 6 p.m. Central.
Yeah.
And you know.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Friday we have Reaperland at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
And then we have a Bones. I believe we have a Bones 5 update this Friday.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
So,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. So
No,
actually,
and no Reaper Errant. No Reaper Errant this week, unfortunately.
no Reaper Ant this week. And actually, Derek, if you've got maybe a video feed and nothing to do Friday at about 4 p.m., then you're welcome to join us on the Bones 5 live update.
Oh,
Cool. I will check my schedule.
yeah.
Yes,
check your
absolutely.
schedule.
So
Well, cool.
outside of that, that's and then we have Miniature Monday on Mondays at 3 p.m. Central, and then this whole show at 4 p.m. on Tuesdays.
Yeah, this. Oh, and next week, unfortunately, there will not be a
Yes.
Crow's Nest show. I'm going to be camping next week, so
You guys hear this? He is not going to be with us because he's camping.
Yeah, I'm going to be camping, so I'm looking forward to that, getting away and getting out of this freaking house. Kitchen remodel update on that. Our new contractors were again here today. They're kicking ass. They're getting a lot done. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope it's just not another train. There's been a train the last couple times we thought there was a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for the raid. And we're about to start raiding. So Bob and Julie, Gene, Jason, Bobby, Rhonda, Corporea, Aaron. We had a Wapple. We had all kinds. Dan Goodchild. I'm just looking at stuff right there. Twisted Doma, Planer. All you folks. Thanks for tuning in. And see you in a couple weeks.
Keep being awesome. That's our tag.
Thanks, everyone.
Keep being awesome. Thanks again, Derek. Have a great week. Bye-bye.